Alright class, welcome back. Today we're going to continue on to Chapter 9. In Chapter 9 we're going to talk about our financial statements. So if we take a look back and see where we've been through the accounting cycle, we started with receiving our source documents, right? We had our invoices, receipts, check stubs, and memorandums. Then we took that information, figured out which accounts were debited, which accounts were credited, and we put it over into the general journal. From there we posted it to the ledger account. We formed the trial balance to make sure that our debits and credits equaled each other. We put the worksheet together, and the worksheet is what we prepared to get ready for our financial statements. And now we have to go ahead and do them. There are three major financial statements that we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about our income statement, our balance sheet, the owner's equity statement, or statement of change in owner's equity, and then the cash flow statement, okay? The three that we're going to go over as far as actually having you guys make them, put them together, are the first three, the statement of change in owner's equity, or the cash flow statement rather. That one we're going to discuss a little bit later on. So let's get into it. The first one that we're going to talk about is exactly what financial statements are, okay? So these are reports that are put together at the end of the period, the end of the accounting period, that basically summarizes what took place during that time period. You're going to take a look at these, so if you were either running a department or if you were the head of a corporation, at the end of the month or at the end of the time period, you would take these documents and just by looking through them, you would be able to tell how much your company was worth, you would be able to tell how much your expenses are, how much money you were making, if you had net income, if you had net loss, if your capital position had changed, also how much your assets, how much debt you have, just by looking through all these financial statements. So now I'm going to show you how to put them together. The first one that we're going to talk about is our income statement, okay? And there are basically four parts to the income statement. The first part is putting together your heading. Who, what, and when. The name of the company, the name of the form of the report, it's income statement in this case, and then the time period that it covers. So for the month ending September, for the month ending June, for whatever month or time period, the quarter, whatever time period is covered, that's what you would put for when it took place. The first section on the income statement is our revenue section. That's where we list our revenues and we total them. The next part is our expense section. That's where we list all of our expenses and we total them. And then finally, the difference between those two will tell us whether we have a net income or we have a net loss. If our revenue is greater than our expenses, we made money, we have a net income. If our expenses are greater than our revenue, then we have a net loss. And that's the whole purpose of the income statement. It's a report of the net income or net loss for a specific time period. Sometimes it's called a profit and loss statement or an earnings statement. So you may hear people say, ask for a P&L for a certain time period. All they're doing is they're shortening the term profit and loss, and they're just looking to see with their revenue, the amount of money or their sales, with the sales greater than the expenses for that time period. Alright, so here's the problem we're going to look at. If you look over here, we have our worksheet. Everything that you need in order to fill out the income statement. All the information that you need will come from over here on the worksheet. I made this a little bit shorter. I cut out the balance sheet part of it because we don't need it to put together the income statement, and I was short for a little bit of space on my board here. So the first thing we want to do is we want to start with our heading. Who, what, and when. What's the name of the company? In this case, it's the same. It's always the same as it's on the worksheet. So Wilderness Rentals would be the name of it. In this case, this form that we're putting together, it's not a worksheet anymore. This is an income statement, and the time period that it covers is going to be the same that's on the worksheet. So it's for the month ending September 30th, 2018 as it is right now. Okay, so now that we have our heading, we have to go on to the next section. Heading was first, second is revenue. So we would just write the word revenue, okay? Simply start by putting the term revenue, and now we're going to list all of our revenue accounts, and we're going to list the amounts. So you got to look at the worksheet and you find your revenue categories. All revenue accounts will start with the number 4. In this case, we have equipment rental revenue. Is listed here on the worksheet. So we would list it here. Now, if you have multiple of things, if there are more than one revenue account, you would list them here in the left column. But if you only have one, it's okay, because that's the total. You would just go right ahead and put that amount over in the right column, which is considered to be the totaling column. So now that we have all of our revenue account, that's the second section. The third section on the income statement is our expenses. So we would list the term expenses underneath there. Now we go back to the worksheet and we go down our list until we find our expenses. They all start with the number 5, and we have multiple expenses here. We have 4 expenses that we have to list. So we start listing them here, and because there's more than one, we have to write the amount over in the listing column. Okay? So we have advertising expense, and we have advertising expense for $2,113. so we list 2113. The next one we have is maintenance expense, and it's for 1,200 hours, so we would list it underneath it. Rent expense. Rent expense came to $3,500, so we list it over there. So here we're just putting the name of the expense, and in the listing column we're writing the amount. Utilities expense came to $2,004, so we write that under that. So that is all the expenses that we have, and we listed them all in the left column, but now we need to come up with a total. So what you'll do is you add them all up, and in accounting, to rule it, to show that we're about to add them up, we draw one line, we add them all up, and we're going to put the total over in the total column. So we write the word total expense here, and lined up in the right column is the total. It came to $8,817 as our total expenses. All right, so now we know what the revenue was for that period, and we know what the expenses were for that period. So now it's time for us to find the difference and figure out, did we have a net income or do we have a net loss? So, if we had revenue, our sales came to $10,629, and our expenses came to $8,817. Our revenue is higher than our expenses. So in that case, we call it a net income. And underneath total expenses, you would write the term net income. Now the difference between our revenue and our expenses is our net income. So because we're subtotaling these, we have to draw another line, subtotal them, and then once we get the difference, we draw two lines to say that that's the final answer, or that's basically what we were solving for, which was net income or net loss. So we had a net income here of $1,812. Our revenue was $1,812 more than the amount that we spent for our expenses. So that would give us a net income. We can always check that number too on our worksheet. Remember, we figured it out over here on our worksheet. So if you come down to the income statement, you'll see right here it says 1812 as the net income. And if they match, more than likely you move the numbers over properly and you were able to prove your net income on your income statement. All right? So that's the first one we're going to talk about is our income statement.